It usually starts in a way that feels almost invisible, like a small decision made once during a busy moment, a free trial activated because it was convenient, a monthly plan accepted because it was cheaper than buying outright, or a service added because it removed friction from a daily task. And at first, nothing feels different in the way money is experienced because the cost is low, predictable, and blended into the background of digital life. Yet over time, these small, recurring charges begin to form a structure that quietly shapes how spending behaves without ever drawing attention to itself. And what makes this system interesting is not the size of any single payment, but the way repetition changes perception, because a financial decision that repeats every month stops feeling like a decision at all and starts feeling like part of the environment. Subscription economics is essentially a shift from ownership to access, where value is no longer tied to a one-time exchange but distributed across time, and this changes how people evaluate cost because the mind processes recurring small losses differently than larger one-time payments, even when the long-term total is higher, and this is where the behavioral layer becomes important. Because once something is embedded in automatic payments, it exits active financial review, meaning it no longer competes with intentional spending decisions in the same mental space, and instead it becomes background infrastructure, like rent or utilities, regardless of whether it still delivers proportional value. From a psychological perspective, the key mechanism at work is habituation, where repeated exposure reduces emotional sensitivity, so a charge that once felt significant becomes normalized. And this normalization interacts with what behavioral economists describe as payment decoupling, where the act of consuming a service is separated from the act of paying for it, and this separation reduces the immediate feedback loop that normally regulates spending. So usage continues even when value declines, because the cost is no longer emotionally visible at the moment of consumption. And over time, this creates a quiet accumulation effect where multiple low-friction commitments stack together across entertainment, productivity, fitness, software, and media. When the structure is translated into numbers, the pattern becomes clearer, because a typical individual might hold 10 to 15 subscriptions without actively tracking them, and even at a conservative average of $10 per service, the monthly total reaches $100 to $150, which compounds to over $1,200 per year. And this does not include tiered pricing that often escalates silently after introductory periods, meaning the real figure is frequently higher. But the more important mathematical detail is not the annual total itself, it is the opportunity cost of fragmentation, because instead of one intentional annual decision, spending is distributed into dozens of passive micro-decisions that bypass conscious optimization. At a systemic level, subscription models align business incentives with retention rather than single transactions, which means design priorities shift toward continuity, convenience, and dependency rather than one-time satisfaction. And this creates a structural environment where cancellation friction, feature bundling, and ecosystem lock-in become normal features of digital products. So the user experience is shaped not just by utility, but by persistence architecture. And as more industries adopt this model, from software to media to basic services, the financial landscape gradually shifts from episodic spending to continuous outflow, which changes how households perceive liquidity because fixed monthly obligations expand even when income remains static. Over time, this creates a subtle cognitive effect where financial flexibility feels reduced, even in the absence of large purchases, because a higher proportion of income is pre-allocated before conscious decision-making begins. And this is where the behavioral shift becomes more important than the monetary one, since the real constraint is not just how much is spent, but how much remains adjustable after automated systems have already claimed their portion. And understanding this structure does not require eliminating subscriptions entirely, but recognizing how they reshape the baseline of spending behavior. So financial awareness becomes less about reacting to expenses and more about periodically reevaluating what has become invisible through repetition. And in that sense, the system is less about subscriptions themselves and more about how easily recurring patterns can redefine what feels normal in personal finance.